Naturally, the best place to start getting into the meat of things with a game is with the gameplay. So how is Injustice purely from its gameplay merits? It's alright. At its most basic, it's MK2011's gameplay, but taken a few steps further as one might expect from a sequel to it, but with a few added touches made specifically for this setting. It's a standard 2D fighter with normals, specials, supers, all that stuff. How it starts to differ from MK is with its normals. Rather than 2 punches and 2 kicks, the face buttons are now for light and heavy hits, an attack designed for knocking the opponent back to activate transitions into other parts of the stage, and a character specific ability that can be a buff, a unique move, or a change of weapons. Some special moves are carried over from MK vs DCU, but it's mostly built from the ground up. Despite having a more limited range of options for normals, the gameplay does feel snappier than MK2011, and if you can get some combos going, you feel like a total badass. However, I do have to criticise the way characters are defeated. This is going to feel like the most pointless tangent ever, but in typical fighting games, when a round ends through KO, the loser collapses onto the ground and stops moving, inferring that they are either unconscious or dead depending on the series. This isn't always the case though. Dead or Alive 4 and 5 have the character go down, then rest on their elbows, visibly exhausted and in pain from the fight. This game tries the latter, but it just looks awful. The animation doesn't start from the character being on the ground, it starts from a standing position, meaning that when you knock the opponent down, as most moves will, they bounce back into a standing position to fall down the correct way, where they're just tired out but often capable of remaining crouched, kneeling or sitting. It's like the character's jumping back to their feet to get killed in Mortal Kombat, only much worse, and it looks even worse in story fights when the character is still clearly conscious, only to then transition to cutscene where they're completely out cold. One of the brand new mechanics is the clash system, which I still have no idea how to initiate. A clash is a wager that either character can initiate where both give up a certain amount of their super gauge. The one who bets the most wins the clash and restores some of their health while the loser takes damage. If they bet the same, it's a tie and nobody gains anything. Certain pairs of characters have unique dialogue, which also changes based on who initiated the clash.
Back to Arkham.
I think not. Smile.
I am smiling.
This later evolved into the fight intros in MKX. In addition to stage transitions, stages also have a number of interactive elements like throwable objects, objects that can be thrown or blown up depending on character type, and objects that can be thrown or jumped off based on character type. There's also an ability to knock the opponent into an object in the background. I believe the general term for these interactables is pig advantage. Blocking in this game is done with the more traditional holding away when the attack connects, as opposed to MK's usual block button. There's also a button to make the character shift which way their body's facing for some reason. Rounds are also handled differently in this game, which carries over to MKX. Rather than the traditional rounds where both characters' health bars reset when one reaches 0, each character has 2 health bars which give a brief pause in the action when one empties. I'm not sure why this concept was changed, but I really don't like it. Imagine player 2's health hits 0 first. They then get player 1's health down to 0 before theirs reaches 0 again. For the final round, rather than the playing field being totally even, player 2 only has whatever health they had left, meaning they're still at a disadvantage. Emptying the opponent's health bar doesn't give you any more, so what this system does effectively is turn it into a single round match that lasts way longer than it should, but there's a break partway through to mitigate the effectiveness of supers. I'd much prefer the traditional style, but speaking of supers, like MK2011's X-ray moves, the super moves in this game are overly long, stupidly over the top moves that most opponents could never survive. Like, despite what the fanboys might say, I seriously doubt Batman can survive being punched into space and then punched back down to Earth, even with the power pills from the story. And worse, each character has exactly one, the same with intros and outros, which makes playing arcade mode incredibly repetitive, as you have to watch the same thing over and over and over and over again. Seriously, fighting game devs, give us more variety like in the olden days. Seeing the same moves, intros and outros every match can very quickly suck the fun out of a game. Stop being so damn lazy. I also can't figure out why the camera's so zoomed out. It's like the camera's from a sprite-based game, not one with 3D models. Was it to be nostalgic? To facilitate larger characters like Bane and Grundy? Was it so the player can get a clearer view of the ways they can interact with the environment? I have no idea. Sure, some of those explanations would be fair enough, but it makes the action feel less weighty and personal than I'd like. But overall, the gameplay is fine. It's serviceable, it works even if it's a bit slow, and it's a definite improvement over MK2011 for what that's worth. with. It laid the groundwork for some clear improvements in MKX and its own sequel, which I hope will turn out good. I mean in the gameplay department, in terms of story, the sequel's fucked.